Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is part two of our ISTQB Foundation Level V4 preparation series, in which we're walking through a full length mock exam designed to look and feel just like the real one. Same style, same difficulty, same structure. So you'll know exactly what to expect on exam day. In today's video, we will be tackling questions 11 through 20. And if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I've dropped the link in the description so you can start from the beginning. Alright, let's not waste any more time and let's jump straight into question number 11. A startup team is discussing shifting its business model to DevOps. The team is debating the advantages of the DevOps approach and how this would help the team deliver better software. Which of the following options is considered the most valid reason supporting their decision to adopt the DevOps approach? As usual, four options are provided. A. Fast and frequent feedback on code quality for developers. B. Low maintenance cost of continuous integration tools. C. Manual testing will no longer be needed due to automating all tests. And finally, option D, the elimination of static analysis, which consumes a lot of time. Pause now if you want to think about it. All right, folks. So, a relatively straightforward question about the benefits of DevOps. Let's start with the first option, fast and frequent feedback on code quality. Well, I don't know about you, but for me, it seems a very valid reason why a team might switch to DevOps, as developers usually get fast and frequent feedback the moment check ins take place. So let's keep option A in mind as a strong contender. Moving to option B and no chance. You see, the DevOps approach revolves around this CI CD pipeline, and that's why it's kept monitored and fine tuned 24 over 7, which will definitely increase the cost of maintaining it. So option B is out. Next, option C, which also a big no. Yes, we can all agree that DevOps automates many activities of the software development lifecycle. However, manual testing is still required, especially for newly implemented features and in usability and acceptance testing. So, claiming that manual testing will no longer be needed is simply false. And finally, option D is also not correct, as static analysis is a major test activity in the DevOps approach, and it saves time and effort on the long run. So, I believe it's very safe to say that the correct answer to this question is option A. It's the only option that represents a valid reason why a team might consider shifting its development approach to DevOps. Great. The next question is number 12. Let's read it together. Which of the following is the least example showing a tester following one of the best favored techniques in manual testing within an agile project? A. Testers are using the fault attacks approach to find unexpected defects. B. Testers are using the session based approach to evaluate untested areas. C. Testers are using zero switch coverage to evaluate system transitions. And finally, option D. Testers are conducting tests based on a checklist of specific cases in a system that may fail when executed. Pause now if you want to think about it. So, this question is basically challenging your understanding of manual test techniques that are mostly used in agile development. Now, while we can all agree that test techniques to be used is context dependent, however, experience-based techniques are more favored in most agile projects because these tests do not require much analysis and design before execution. Now, applying this understanding to the options, we can see that options fault attack, session-based testing, and checklist-based testing are all examples of experience-based test techniques, while option C, zero switch coverage, represents a black box test technique, which normally will require some extent of analysis and design. It might be used, sure, but not as much as the other experience based test techniques. So let's check if our analysis is correct. Excellent. Indeed, option C is the correct answer to this question. Great. So the next question is number 13, and it says, which test level corresponds to testing carried out by roles outside the development organization at a different developer's test environment and external location? A. System integration testing. B. System testing. C. Usability testing. D. Acceptance testing. Pause now if you want to think about it. All right, so at first glance, this question might look a little tricky, but honestly, it's not. If you slow down and read it carefully, the meaning becomes clear. What the question is really asking is this: which test level matches testing that's done by people outside the development organization? In other words, testing carried out by customers or independent testers, usually in an external environment or directly at the customer site. So, what do you think? Of course, it's beta testing. And according to the ISTQB glossary, beta testing is a type of acceptance testing performed at an external site to the developer's test environment by roles outside the development organization. See? Very simple. And that makes option D the correct choice for this question. Awesome. Let's now shift gears to question number 14. The question says, as a tester, you found a bug in the sign up feature form where users can sign up without entering the obligatory email field. After the developer has fixed the defect, you decided to retest the sign up functionality, and here are your options. 1. Rerunning the original test cases that identified the defect where the email field is left blank during the sign-up process. 2. Write new test cases to confirm that the sign-up cannot be executed with invalid email formats, like if the email contains spaces, invalid characters, or an email without the @ symbol. However, your team is already way past the deadline for project deployment, and your manager is considering reducing the amount of testing in order to deploy the system as soon as possible. In your opinion, what would be the most wise option for your manager? Most wise. Anyways, let's take a look at the provided options. A. No testing will be performed to respect the deadline. We trust the developer to fix the bug. B. We will only run option 1 and skip option 2. C. We will only run option 2 and skip option 1. And finally, option D. Quality is always a priority. We will do both steps regardless of the deadline. Pause now if you want to think about it. Great, so a very nice one. And the first thing to do here is to understand two major contextual key points. First, we should be able to identify what test type we are dealing with here. Obviously, this is confirmation testing, which is a form of change-related testing. Confirmation testing is performed after fixing a defect. It's conducted to ensure that the failure induced by this defect won't show up anymore. Second, it seems like time is not on our side. Under time pressure as we have already missed the deadline. From this point, things are easy to analyze. Option A seems extremely wrong. It's never a good idea to skip confirmation testing after fixing a defect, no matter what. On the other hand, option B is a very good candidate for being the correct answer. Because when we are under severe time pressure, confirmation testing can be restricted to exercising the same test steps that originally caused the failure, without digging deeper trying to induce the same failure but in different ways. So let's keep option B in mind. Now, option C is the reversed mirror image of option B, hence it's incorrect by default. And for option D, it's obvious that it's not the best thing to do because we don't have the luxury of spending that much time. This leaves us with only option B as the most reasonable and wise choice, helping us maintain a decent quality level while saving us some precious time that we really need. Alright, so we're almost halfway through this video, and before we proceed to question number 15, if you are finding this series useful, you can always support us by hitting that like button. That's great. Let's read question number 15. Consider the following defect report template. This template is to be used for documenting the findings of a static review session regarding the project's requirements. Now, this bug report seems empty. That's expected because it's just a template. Anyway, it contains the following columns: bug ID, infected requirements, defect description, and reproduction steps. Now, the question asks which of the following columns is considered the least required for this template. And then you're giving some options, which are basically the columns of the defect report. Pause now if you want to think about it for a moment. Awesome. Now, the key to answering this question is to focus on the context, not the defect report itself. What I mean here is that we're planning to document defects found during a static review session, right? This means we're dealing with static work products like system designs, flowcharts, or even inspecting the code without running it. The bottom line, there is no software execution. So, have you guessed the unnecessary column now? Well, it's the reproduction steps. Very obvious as a matter of fact, no execution, no test steps to follow, just inspect, find anomalies, and remove them. Great! Hope you're enjoying the series. And as a quick reminder, if you want to practice more, you can check the comment section where you will find 3 links. The first is for the preparation exam course that contains 6 additional exams like this one. The second is for the ISTQB Masterclass containing the syllabus explanation accompanied by quizzes and an additional 3 exams. Or grab both of them with a bundle. That's the third link. Of course, using these links help us a lot. So thanks in advance. And now let's move on to the next question. All right, question number 16. Let's read it together. Consider the following roles in a review: scribe, author, moderator. Also, consider the following tasks required to be carried out during the review. 1. Fix defects found in a work product. 2. Ensure smooth reviews where everyone can speak freely. 3. Recording of decisions taken in a review. 4. Decide who will be involved in the review. Which of the following tasks would not have a role to fulfill? Pause now if you want to think about it. Very well. This one is actually pretty much straightforward question. We're given four tasks and three roles, which means that one of the tasks won't have a role to perform it. The trick here is to carefully look at each task, figure out which role is responsible for it, and then identify the leftover task. That unmatched task is the one we are hunting for. So let's start with option A, fix defect found in our product. And this task can be performed by the author who's available. So this is not what we are looking for. For option B, ensure smooth reviews where everyone can speak freely is covered by the moderator, also available. Next, option C, recording of decisions taken in a review is covered by the scribe or so-called the recorder, again available. This leaves us with option D, which should be the one we're looking for. So the fourth task is decide who will be involved in the review. And thankfully, this is the responsibility of the review leader, who's not available among the roles mentioned in the question. So yeah, the review leader is the missing role here, and that makes option D the correct choice for this question. Let's see what we have next. So the next question is number 17, which says, which of the following examples is considered the least good practice that could happen in a review? And when it happens, it can impact the review process negatively. As usual, four options are provided. A. The project manager decides to conduct a review to discuss the acceptance criteria of the software under development. B. The review leader invited the system architect, one developer, two testers, and the product owner to the review. C. The scribe starts recording all of the findings of the review and hands them to the manager. And lastly, option D. The test manager thanked the participants and evaluated their performance during the review. Pause now if you want to think about it. Great. I hope you got this one right. And now let's analyze these options together to figure out which of them is a good practice to be performed in a standard review and which is not. Option A describes a very typical act from the project manager, as reviewing or discussing the acceptance criteria ensures that they are clear and helps the project run smoothly. So, nothing out of the ordinary here. Option B also describes something that's very normal. The review leader is inviting the required participants to the review. Now, option C describes a very classic role of the scribe, recording the review findings and minutes of meeting, nothing suspicious, I must say, and hence we're left with option D, which should be describing something weird. And indeed, there is something not right here. Of course, I don't mean thanking the participants. This is an act of gentlemen. But what I mean is evaluating the performance of the participants. This does not go with the best practices in reviews. You see, in order for participants to freely express their point of view, they need to feel safe and not being judged or evaluated. So that's why option D, if happened, can impact the review process negatively, and therefore is the correct option for this question. Let's see what we have next. Alright, so the next question is number 18, and it says a review is being held to discuss the test cases of a new feature of a software under development. The participants are a tester, a developer, a business analyst, and a product owner. The tester discusses the test cases with other participants, explains test cases to them, and tries to get ideas on how to further improve these test cases. which kind of reviews are mostly represented in this context? A. Informal review. B. Technical review. C. Walkthrough. D. Inspection. Pause now if you want to think about it. Now, I believe this one needs little or even no thinking or analysis. Obviously, this is an abstract demonstration of walkthroughs, a classic review type in which the author of the work product, in this case the tester, is leading the review and brainstorming with participants on how to further improve their work product under review. I mean the test cases. So yeah, option C, walkthrough, is the perfect choice. No doubt about that. And now let's encounter question number 19. So, question number 19 says white box and black box testing are different test techniques. Which of the following options represents a key difference between these two test techniques? Seems like an easy one, so let's read the options. A. Experience based testing can be used as a complement to white box testing, but not black box testing. B. Any change in the code implementation will affect white box testing, while this is not always the case in black box testing. C. White box testing is known as specification based testing, while black box testing is known as structured based testing. And lastly, option D, white box test techniques are independent of the internal structure of the test object, while in black box testing, the internal structure will have a direct effect on how test cases are designed. Pause now if you want to think about it. Awesome. Let's analyze each option and try to find the one that makes the most sense. Starting with option A, this one does not seem logical. This is because experience based testing is considered a complementary technique to both white and black box testing. Next, option B states that code changes will affect white box test cases. Now, I would say this is correct because white box testing is based on the internal structure of the test object. So, whenever the code changes, those tests are likely to be impacted. This isn't always true for black box testing. In black box testing, we focus on the external behavior of the system, not the internal code. That means the implementation might change completely, but as long as the functionality remains the same, the black box tests don't necessarily need to change. For example, imagine the code behind a button click is written using a new approach. The internal flow might be completely different, but if the button still works exactly the same for the end user, the black box test cases for the button will remain valid. So, with this reasoning, we can keep option B in mind as a possible correct answer to this question. Now, moving to option C, this is obviously an incorrect statement. It's white box testing that is known as structured based testing, while black box testing is known as specification based testing. And lastly, option D is the opposite of option B. And since we believe that option B is correct, that makes option D incorrect. So it's settled, I guess. Option B is the most reasonable choice, giving an accurate distinction between white and black box test techniques. That's awesome, and let's jump into the final question in today's video. Question number 20. Well done, everyone. Let's see what we have here. So, the question says a social media platform pays the content creators $1,000 for the first million views of their videos. Then, $750 for every next million views. You are eligible for payment if you hit a million views and there is no cap or limit on payments. Given the following set of data -1, 100,000, 2,000,000, 200,000. Now, if you want to test the payment system of this platform, how much equivalence partitioning coverage does this dataset provide? So, a great question, and as always, we have four options to choose from: 50%, 66.6%, 75%, and 100%. Pause now if you want to think about it. Alright, so the correct answer is option C, that's 75%, and let's see why it's the case. So, the best way to answer any equivalence partitioning question is by quickly sketching whatever information is provided in the question. Looking at the sketch, we can confirm that there are total of 4 partitions. One invalid partition containing all the negative values, plus 3 valid partitions. So this is the below 0 partition, which is the invalid partition. This partition contains views from 0 to less than 1 million views, and this partition pays nothing. Then we have a partition that contains values from 1 million views up to 1,999,999, which will pay the content creator $1,000. And lastly, the partition that contains 2 million views and up, and that one will pay $750. Of course, any value above 2 million views is considered within the same partition, whether 4 million views or even 10 million, because all of them have the same outcome, which is $750. Now, the moment we know our partitions, things become much easier. And if we analyze the dataset provided, we can find that the valid partition is covered by -1. First valid partition covered by 100,000. However, the second valid partition is not covered, as there is no data given that could test its outcome. And finally, the third valid partition is covered by 2,200,000. So, in conclusion, we have 4 partitions, 3 of them are covered, which makes our coverage equals 3 divided by 4, that's 75%. Alright folks, this is the signal for the end of part 2 of our series. Up next is the third part, where we're going to discuss questions from 21 to 30. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.